Questions for reflection. Our first reading for today's Holy Mass is taken from the 26th chapter of the book of the prophet Isaiah. It is a part of Judah's song of praise to God and request for deliverance. A beautiful, earnest prayer from a people who has repented and turned back to the Lord. The verses read to us from the Ambo today are best understood in the context of the whole chapter, which I highly recommend you read and pray over. Here is the last portion, and I quote, "As a pregnant woman near her time of delivery writhes and cries out in her pangs, so have we been, Yahweh, in your eyes. We have been pregnant, we have writhed, but we have given birth only to wind. We have not given salvation to the earth. No inhabitants for the world have been brought to birth. Your dead will come back to life. Your corpses will rise again. Wake up and sing, you dwellers in the dust, for your dew will be a radiant dew, but the earth will give birth to the shades." End quote. This was the Lord's hope and reason for sending the prophet to speak the words of warning. He wanted them to return to him and find true freedom. This was why the Lord allowed Judah to experience the very consequences of their own choice to rebel and reject the ways of the Lord. When we sin, we make the wrong choice, and the consequences which follow are our own fault. The way to freedom and flourishing is to honestly admit our sin, ask forgiveness, and turn back to the Lord. As Catholics, we have the beautiful sacrament of confession or penance, which offers us a new beginning. How often do we avail ourselves of this wonderful gift? The psalmist David implores the Lord to have mercy on Zion in the portion of Psalm 102, which serves as our responsorial psalm for today's Mass. The entire psalm is a prayer to God, the eternal King, for help. God always helps. He always looks down from heaven. And he listens for our prayer. As David proclaims, quote, "He will turn to hear the prayer of the destitute and will not treat their prayer with scorn," end quote. Do we believe this? Do we pray frequently? We should. The Lord has created us for himself, as St. Augustine reminded us, and our hearts are restless until they rest in him. The Gospel for today's Holy Mass is a continuation of the words of Jesus at the end of the 11th chapter of St. Matthew's Gospel account. They immediately follow after yesterday's short Gospel passage, where Jesus rejoices that the Father has revealed himself not to those who think they are learned and wise, but to children. In preaching a homily on this passage, St. Augustine tells the faithful that the burden of which Jesus speaks, the burden he gives us after we surrender our own heavy burden to him, is light. He says, and I quote, "This burden is not a weight at all. It is wings to fly with," end quote. God gives us only good, even if it seems to come dressed in pain or struggle. The author of the New Testament letter to the Hebrews wrote, and I quote, "For we do not have a high priest who's unable to sympathize with our weaknesses, but one who has been similarly tested in every way, yet without sin." And that's Hebrews 14:15. When we cast our cares on the Lord, he gives us the grace, the divine life we need. St. Jose Maria Escriva once wrote this, quote, "The great Christian revolution has been to convert pain into fruitful suffering and to turn a bad thing into something good. We have deprived the devil of this weapon, and with it, we can conquer eternity," end quote. But as Jesus said, we must come to him, not just at Mass on the weekends, but every day, every hour. We must live our life in him and ask him to live his life through us.